Hi, this is a research presentation on Amish and Society by Kendra Patrick. Thank you for joining me today. So let's talk about the Amish. And before we can discuss the Amish and Society within the presentation, I wanted to kind of review who the Amish are. And as we've learned a lot about them throughout this semester, just kind of touch base on some very important facts about them. So the Amish, who are they? The Amish is a Protestant Christian group that immigrated to North America, both the U.S. and Canada, between 1730 and 1850. The Amish settled in the U.S. and Canada, with most settlements peppered throughout the Midwest. A lot of settlements within Pennsylvania and Ohio. The agrarian group, you can detect them from other members of society by their distinct dress, in which the women wear very plain dresses. They wear very high necklines and typically a head covering such as a bonnet. The men typically wear trousers, button-up shirts, and suspenders, and sometimes they'll wear hats or a head covering as well. They have a very distinct language. Within their communities, they typically speak Pennsylvania Dutch. They also speak English when they're communicating with modern society or the English society. And you will often see them driving around and traveling in with horses and buggies, in very plain black covered buggies. This group, also known as the Amish, live by very traditional values. They're very simple and they live very traditionally and have traditional church services, traditional books, and also very traditional ways that they communicate amongst the community. So let's talk a little bit about the Amish Society. So as we mentioned, Amish Society, they're a very church-based group. We'll call them just a community is what we'll call them. So they live their daily lives based on the Bible. They also live based on God's rules or God's will. And then for church services, instead of attending in a typical English church building, they often attend, or actually will attend, services at homes or barns. And they travel to those church services through walking or riding in horses and buggies, depending on how far they live from the actual church. Church is held at someone within the congregation's home or barn, and is not held at an outside building or in an outside community. With regards to their families, they typically have large families, which could be between 5 and 10 children. This is based on their beliefs that everyone should work together as part of the community. Great segue into our next bullet here with the community. They're very collectivistic versus individualistic. So they will make choices based on what is good for the community and not necessarily what is good for the person. So if they make a decision to do something, it's based on how it will affect the community versus if it's based on how it will affect one individual and or just their family. Within the Amish Society, there are many different congregations, but there's an old order and a new order. So the old order is very strict and traditional and very attuned to the values that were brought over when they immigrated from Europe. And the new order is not quite as strict as the old order and have been built by different sects or different portions of the Amish community that are branching out into new areas as well as new communities. They embrace some modern technologies, some of the more modern technologies, versus the old order, which kept very strict thoughts against the old traditional and lack of technologies. Modern society. All right, so let's talk about this a little bit. Let's call this is us, guys. We're the English. So the modern society is North Americans, or also known as the English. Our society, as we well know, is very technology driven, by the internet, by television, mass media, which would include radio and print, as well as books. We're very individualistic, so we look for what it will make us happy and what will help us and or our families or loved ones versus what will help our communities. And most, if not all of us, work outside the community. So we will travel to offices, to factories, to construction jobs that are located within cities and outside of our actual communities. We'll actually commute to our jobs. So we work within other entities outside of our homes. Okay, so the barriers of entry, or what can prevent the Amish society from integrating more with our modern society, is one of the big things is the controlled communication. So the communication that goes into the Amish community or that is disseminated within the Amish community is very controlled. So there's no access to the internet, to the televisions, mass media, cell phones, and we can go on and on and on. By controlling this communication, this prevents a lot of new ideas or ideals being thrown at the Amish community. So they kind of live in this enclosed environment with minimal outside influences with regards to that. Also, within their own communities, the Amish typically speak Pennsylvania Dutch when they're communicating with one another. When they communicate with others outside of the Amish community, aka the English, they will communicate in English, but they tend to communicate in Pennsylvania Dutch. In addition, the Amish communities and societies publish their own school textbooks. They don't buy them from publishers like we would do in a traditional public school. And they also write and publish their own newsletters and publications that are specific for their communities and or the Amish society. One of the large barriers of entry, what would prevent someone from an Amish community integrating into and within the English community, is shunning. So with shunning, as we've learned during this semester, we have definitely learned that shunning is where the church and the family of the person who leaves the Amish community will shun them or will not have anything to do with them, whether it's through communication, whether it's through fellowship, whether it's through attending family events. They will basically turn their backs on that individual because they choose to leave the church. All right, so let's talk about some Amish businesses and how this impacts society. So when we're talking about the Amish societies, they were basically, when they first immigrated to the States and started living here within the United States, they were primarily agricultural based. Through economics, through growth, population growth, they've had to shift that a little bit. So Amish businesses interact with the English or modern society because they do have agricultural-based business, which they produce produce and or vegetables and fruits. Animal farming, they raise and butcher animals, and then they also bake baked goods and sell those to people within the the English communities. In addition, Amish businesses, they've got a lot of woodworking businesses with handmade furniture, handmade basketry. Also, they have businesses in which they sell to English or non-Amish community members. In addition to that, they also have arts and crafts that they sell, which includes any kind of personal hygiene items such as handmade soaps, shaving creams, lotions, and then also quilts that they design, make, and sell to non-Amish community members, aka the English. We talk a little bit more about the types of businesses that sell to, not necessarily integrate, but sell to modern English. We also have manufacturing and construction businesses, such as farm equipment and building construction businesses. And one of the large integrations between the Amish Society and the English Society is tourism. So there's a place in Ohio called Holmes County where there's a huge tourist industry there, in which people who are non-Amish will go to Holmes County and they will shop, buy antiques or furniture from Amish businesses. They'll buy produce, foods, breads, which include breads and cheeses, other baked goods, and then also farm animals and meat and dairy products. So let's talk a little bit about technology and the Amish society. So when we're talking about technology, oftentimes we'll think about the internet and radio, TV, mass media, all that super fun stuff. But when we're talking about society here, the Amish do embrace technology somewhat, and they adapt or modify technology to suit their cultural values. So when we're looking at technology, what is a big no, no, no in the Amish community? Is owning an automobile, public electricity, or television, radio, and internet within their homes. So if we look at a maybe category, the Amish would embrace technology, such as like farm equipment, which would be gas-powered tractors, gas-powered mowers, rubber tires, or gas-powered electric generators to help run some of the machines within the dairy, and or something as simple as washing machines. They will embrace that because they can adapt it and they're not connected to the electricity. Keep in mind that they're wanting to control that communication and those communication portals from the English or the modern society. So let's talk about Amish health or Amish society health. So the difference between Amish society health and modern technology health is that we have a ton of technology that we use for surgeries or injuries or illnesses, and the Amish try to keep it within their communities by using folk medicine, which is herbs, supplements, home remedies. They also believe in some of the Amish communities believe in healers or people who can heal you from an ailment. They also involve midwives when a woman is getting ready to give birth or is pregnant. The challenge with the midwives now is that regulations have become more stringent, which really limits the midwives from doing some of their practices in some of the states. It's a state-by-state basis. So that can impact some of the health from the Amish, with the Amish. They employ prayer or God's will. So if someone becomes ill, they do a lot of prayers for that person in order to get well, overcome the illness, or to get better. And then also with vaccinations, they did not vaccinate their children at all. They're more open to vaccinating children now because it's had an impact on their communities by losing some children due to measles, whooping cough, conditions such as that. So that's evolving a little bit than it has in the past. One more tidbit about the health. Healthcare costs for an Amish community is shared by the community. So if someone goes to the hospital or has a lengthy illness, that will be shared by the community versus the individual and or the family. Everyone within that community will share for the treatment and healthcare for that person. In addition, the church provides emotional, physical, and financial support in the Amish society, as opposed to where we go, we get sick, we go to the doctor, we get some medications, and then next time we get an illness, we do the same things. All right, let's talk a little bit about Amish versus the modern government. So when we're looking at this in the Amish society, during World War II, the Amish did not believe or do not believe that they should be participating in military um, activities. They do not believe that they should participate in those at all. So during World War II, when we had the draft, there was some issues between Amish and our government because they didn't feel that their young men should be drafted. Anybody 18 and over should be drafted into the war. So those people who would have been of draft age were sent to other communities and other projects located throughout the United States to help with the World War II efforts. In addition, the Amish do not pay into Social Security and Medicare. Therefore, they are not able to pull those benefits when they become of age or become disabled. This is a way for them to prevent having to rely on others or rely on the government for their health or for their financial security when they get older. Secondary schooling. The Amish only believe that their children should attend school until the 8th grade because they feel that to lead a good life, children or youngsters know everything by the time that they're in 8th grade. They do not attend high school or college. And then there was a well-known case between Wisconsin versus Yoder, where an Amish community member was sued because he did not force his children to go to secondary school. Voting. So when we talk about voting, the Amish vote in local elections, but they typically do not vote in national elections. And the Amish will typically not integrate into our modern society. And why? Why would they not want to do this? Because it's great, it's fun. It's because they are so based on the Christian traditional values that the farther that one is away from the community, the farther they are away from God. So you're not seeing typically you're not seeing those people assimilate very well into Amish community members assimilate very well into modern society. Being English in an Amish society. So when we talk about this, it would be such as you or I going to an Amish community and deciding that we're going to be Amish. It's very difficult to become Amish. It's difficult because there is the overall community judgment of not being one of the Amish. It's because our values are so ingrained in us from such a young age that their Amish values and our modern values are conflicted. With regards to Amish society and living in an Amish society, church is of the utmost importance, and you should always attend. You will always attend. There are absolutely no excuses, and this can get you kicked out of the Amish community for not going to church. And their entire lives are based on the Bible or living Christ-like. So if you haven't grown up in that environment, it's very difficult to assimilate all of those values to that. And then also community, and or that if we're talking about that collectivistic culture, you must do what's best for the community and not just what's best for yourself and the family. No matter what it is, decisions are made for you. And it's not in your interest to question those, which would be hard to assimilate into if you lived in, going from a modern society to an Amish society. Being Amish in an English society. So typically with the Amish youth, of course, we've learned about Rumspringa. And when the older children of the community will go out and decide if they want to become part of the Amish church or if they want to live an English lifestyle. So when the Amish youth leave the community, they're responsible for their own lives. So they're responsible for everything within their own lives, and their family will be of no support. And what has been mentioned is that they will often return to the community because it's so difficult to assimilate to the English culture. On top of that, it being difficult to assimilate to the culture and, basically taking care of themselves. Acceptance. The family will often shun or turn their backs on family members who leave. So the Amish community will turn their back on you because you are turning your back on the church. It's difficult for your family members who remain within the Amish community to make exceptions once you have left the community, and it impacts their daily life, as they could be shunned by the church. They could be treated differently by those within the community, and it could affect their daily lives as well. And then once the steps have been taken in the church and or the community has shunned a member of the community, it's a high risk to take to not be allowed to go back for reunions or funerals, weddings, special events within the community. So it's really hard to make those decisions once someone has moved into the English society from the Amish society. Okay, so let's go ahead and conclude this. And in conclusion, although the Amish appear to be simple, old-fashioned community that seem to be lost in time, they're really a self-sustaining, collectivistic culture that supports one another within the community. And they work as a community to remain separate from the modern English world. And although we parallel in certain aspects where we buy their Amish products and or they buy English products, or we may buy some of their furniture, there's still this disconnect and of them being, one community and then us being the modern society. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.